Hello friends, welcome to Luxury and Adventure Stories, where elegance meets drama, and every story takes you deep into the world of wealth, power, secrets, and unforgettable journeys. Please subscribe and turn on your notification bell for more stories. Sit back, relax, like and share as we dive into today's story. In the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, where the sun draped the city and a golden glow in the air pulsed with the frenetic energy of ambition, Adebayo Ogunlayi lived a life most could only dream of. At 28, he was the heir to the Ogunlayi Empire, a colossal conglomerate that dominated real estate, oil, and technology. His father, Chief Olusegun Ogunlayi, was a formidable patriarch, his name synonymous with power, his handshake a seal of deals that shaped skylines. His mother, Alhaja Amina, was the heart of the family, a philanthropist whose name graced schools, hospitals, and orphanages across West Africa. Bayo, as his inner circle called him, was their golden son, tall and broad-shouldered, with a chiseled jaw that could have been carved from ebony, eyes that shimmer with quiet intelligence, and a smile so disarming it could coax a laugh from a stone. Yet, beneath this polished exterior, Bayo was a man adrift. His world was a dazzling parade of luxury. Sprawling mansions in Ikoyi with marble floors that echoed under his footsteps, private jets that whisked him to Dubai for weekend getaways, and garage filled with cars that gleamed like polished gems under the Lagos sun. He wore tailored suits from Savile Row, sipped rare cognac older than he was, and dined at restaurants where the menus had no prices. But his heart was restless, yearning for something his wealth couldn't buy. He had courted women who moved in his orbit, models with faces like polished porcelain, actresses whose smiles lit up red carpets, and heiresses whose pedigrees rivaled his own. Each relationship began with promise, but soon unraveled into a hollow dance. Their eyes, he noticed, lingered not on him but on the Ogunlayi name, their affection a glittering veneer that masked their hunger for status. Bayo craved a love that was raw, untainted by the allure of his fortune, a love that saw the man beneath the mogul, the soul behind the empire. One humid evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the Atlantic Ocean in shades of fire, Bayo sat at his penthouse on the top floor of a glass tower in Banana Island. The view was breathtaking. Lagos' skyline a constellation of lights, the ocean whispering secrets to the shore. He reclined on a leather sofa, a crystal glass of cognac in hand, the amber liquid catching the glow of a chandelier overhead. The penthouse was a masterpiece of design. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture in shades of cream and charcoal, and abstract art that cost more than most people's homes. Yet it felt like a gilded cage, beautiful but suffocating. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of the air conditioner and the distant pulse of Afrobeat drifting from a yacht party on the marina below. Bayo swirled the cognac, his mind heavy with discontent. He thought of the women he'd dated. Laura, the model who'd gushed over his yacht, but barely listened when he spoke of his love for old high-life music. Or Temi, the heiress who planned their wedding in her head after 2 dates, her eyes gleaming at the thought of merging their family names. Each had left him emptier than before, their affection a transaction veiled in smiles. He set the glass down and stood, pacing to the window. The city sprawled before him, a chaotic tapestry of wealth and struggle, dreams and hustle. Somewhere out there, he thought, was a woman who would see him. Not his bank account, not his lineage, but him. But how could he find her when his identity cast a shadow that obscured everything else? Then, like a bolt of lightning slicing through the humid air, an idea struck. What if he could shed his identity, peel away the trappings of wealth, and step into the world as an ordinary man? What if he could meet someone who loved him for his heart, not his heritage? The thought sent a thrill through him, his pulse quickening as if he'd stumbled upon a hidden treasure. He would disguise himself, abandon the Ogunlayi name, and live as someone new, someone unburdened by expectation. The audacity of it made his breath catch. It was reckless, almost absurd, but it felt right, like a key turning in a lock. But who could he become? He leaned against the window, the cool glass grounding him as he considered his options. A teacher, shaping young minds in a classroom filled with eager faces? He imagined himself at a chalkboard, explaining algebra to wide-eyed students, but the thought felt too static, too confined. A mechanic, hands stained with grease, coaxing life back into battered engines? He smiled at the image. Bayo, who'd never so much as changed a tire, wrestling with wrenches in a dusty workshop. No, it needed to be something dynamic, something that let him move through the city, invisible yet indispensable. Then it hit him, a delivery man. It was perfect, humble, unassuming, a role that would weave him into Lagos's vibrant fabric. He pictured himself on a motorcycle, zipping through the city's chaotic streets, delivering packages to homes, offices, and markets, meeting people from every walk of life. The job was gritty, far removed from his world of boardrooms and banquets, but it promised freedom, connection, and the chance to be seen as just Bayo. The idea was thrilling, but terror gnawed at its edges. Lagos was a beast, its streets a labyrinth of honking cars, weaving okadas, and pedestrians darting through gaps like fish in a current. He'd seen it from the tinted windows of his SUV, but never felt its raw pulse. Could he survive its chaos, its unrelenting hustle? And what of his parents? Chief Olusegun would see this as madness, a betrayal of the legacy he'd built. Alhaja Mina, with her quiet wisdom, might understand, but even she would worry. Yet, the fire in Bayo's heart burned brighter than his fear. He wanted this. No, he needed it. For the first time in years, he felt alive, driven by a purpose that wasn't tied to his father's empire. The next morning, Bayo summoned his best friend, Tun Adeyemi, the only person he trusted with his radical plan. Tun was a tech entrepreneur whose startup had taken Lagos by storm, a man whose sharp wit and unshakable loyalty had anchored their friendship since their days at the University of Lagos. They met at a discreet cafe in Victoria Island, a tucked-away spot with wooden tables and a fan that creaked overhead. The air smelled of fresh coffee and Accra frying in a nearby stall, and the hum of morning traffic filtered through the open windows. Bayo arrived first, dressed in a simple polo shirt and jeans to avoid drawing attention, his usual tailor flair replaced by an understated look. He sipped a cup of bitter coffee, his nerves jangling as he waited. Tun strode in, his phone pressed to his ear, barking instructions to an employee about a coding glitch. He was shorter than Bayo, with a wiry frame and a perpetual grin that made him look younger than his 30 years. He ended the call, slid into the chair opposite Bayo, and ordered a plate of moin moin before fixing his friend with a curious stare. "Oga, what's this early morning summons?" he asked, his tone teasing. "You look like you're planning a coup." Bayo leaned forward, his voice low but intense. "I need your help, Tund. I'm doing something big. I want to disguise myself, live as an ordinary guy, and find a woman who'll love me for me, not my money." Tun's eyes widened. Then he burst into laughter, so loud it drew glances from nearby tables. "You're mad," he said, nearly knocking over his coffee. "You, Adebayo Ogunlai, playing commoner? Riding a bike in Lagos traffic? Chief will have a heart attack. And your mother, she'll drag you to church for deliverance." "I'm serious," Bayo said, his jaw set, though a smile tugged at his lips. Tun's laughter was infectious, but he needed his friend to see the fire in his eyes. "I'm tired of women who see my bank account before they see me. I want to find her, the one, and I can't do that with everyone bowing because of my last name." Tun's laughter faded, replaced by a searching look. He leaned back, crossing his arms, his tech bro swagger giving way to a perceptive friend who'd seen Bayo through heartbreak and triumph. "You're really doing this, aren't you? Going full Nollywood hero, eh?" He sighed, rubbing his temples as if warding off a headache. "Okay, let's say I buy this madness. What's the plan? You can't just walk into Yaba and start hawking bread. You need a cover story. And a job." "I've thought about it," Bayo said, his voice steady now, the plan crystallizing as he spoke. "I want to be a delivery man. Swift rides, maybe. It's low-key, lets me move around, meet people. I'll rent a room somewhere, get a cheap bike, dress like I'm hustling. No one will know I'm an Ogunlai." Tund whistled low and long. "Delivery man? In this Lagos? Oga, you've never even ridden a bike in traffic. You'll crash into a Danfo before lunch." He paused and softened. "But I get it. You want real. Fine. I know a guy who runs Swift rides. Owolabi. I can get you in, no questions asked. But, Bayo, Lagos isn't your gated state. It's rough out there, traffic, touts, heat, the hustle. You sure you can handle it?" "I can handle it," Bayo said, his jaw set, though a flicker of doubt danced in his chest. He'd never known hardship, never sweated for a paycheck, or dodged area boys in a market. The Lagos he knew was air-conditioned, filtered through tinted windows and security details. But the longing in his heart, the need to find a love that was true, burned brighter than his fear. Just get me the job, Tund, and keep this between us. No one else can know. Tund nodded, his grin returning, though tinged with worry. You're crazy, but I've got your back. Just don't blame me when you're eating roadside boli and cursing this plan. He pulled out his phone, firing off a message to Owolabi. Give me a few days. I'll set it up. As they parted, Bayo felt a surge of adrenaline, like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap. Back at his penthouse, he began his transformation. He packed away his designer clothes, trading them for faded t-shirts and jeans bought from a second-hand stall in Tejuosho Market. His Rolex went into a safe, replaced by a plastic wristwatch that ticked too loudly. He found a battered motorcycle through an online ad, its paint chipped but its engine growling with life. In Yaba, he rented a single room in a crowded tenement, its walls stained with age, its ceiling fan creaking like a tired old man. The space was a far cry from his penthouse, with a narrow bed, a rickety table, and a shared bathroom down the hall, but it felt like the start of something real. Telling his parents was the hardest part. He visited their mansion in Ikoyi, a sprawling estate with manicured lawns and a fountain that bubbled like champagne. Chief Olusegun sat in his study, surrounded by mahogany shelves and framed photos of handshake deals with presidents. He frowned at Bayo's vague talk of a sabbatical to find himself, his voice sharp with disbelief. Find yourself? You're an Ogunlai. Your path is set. Don't waste time on nonsense. Alhaja Mina, seated beside him in a flowing bubu, was quieter, her eyes searching Bayo's face. She said little, but as he left, she squeezed his hand, her touch warm and knowing, as if she saw the truth he couldn't voice. Be careful, my son, she whispered. Follow your heart, but guard it well. Bayo's first day as a delivery man was a baptism by fire. He reported to Swift Ride's depot in Agba, a chaotic yard filled with motorcycles, and riders shouting over the roar of engines. Owolabi, a burly man with a scar across his cheek, handed him a helmet and a phone loaded with a delivery app, barely glancing at him. Don't crash, don't steal, and don't be late, he barked. Bayo nodded, his heart pounding as he straddled his bike, its seat worn smooth by years of use. Lagos hit him like a tidal wave. The streets were a labyrinth of honking cars, weaving okadas, and pedestrians darting through gaps like fish in a current. The sun was merciless, baking the asphalt until it shimmered, and sweat soaked his shirt within minutes. He navigated potholes that could swallow a tire, dodged Danfo buses whose drivers leaned out to hurl insults, and swerved around hawkers balancing trays of bread and sachet water. His phone buzzed incessantly with orders, a steaming plate of jollof rice to a bank in Marina, a bag of groceries to a harried mother in Surulere, a pair of glittery heels to a woman in Acadia who tipped him with a distracted smile and a murmured "God bless you." The work was grueling. His legs ached from hours on the bike, his hands blistered from gripping the handlebars, and his lungs burned from inhaling exhaust fumes that hung thick in the air. A near collision with a truck left him shaking, his heart hammering as horns blared around him. Yet, there was a strange exhilaration in it. For the first time, Bayo felt part of Lagos, not a spectator gliding through an attended SUV, but a thread in its vibrant, chaotic fabric. He stopped at a roadside buka in Ojalegba, where a plump woman named Mama T served him umla and a gussi stew, the spicy broth warming his belly as she teased him about his fine boy looks. He bantered with market women in Balagan, their laughter sharp and infectious, and listened to the stories of his fellow riders. Men like Kazim, who dreamed of owning a barbershop, and Emeka, who sent every kobo home to his mother in Enugu. Their lives were raw, their struggles real, and Bayo, despite his disguise, felt a kinship with them, a sense of belonging he'd never known in his world of galas and boardrooms. But he hadn't found her yet, the woman who would ignite his soul. Each delivery brought new faces, new stories. The banker who tipped generously but never looked up from her phone, the grandmother who pressed a boiled yam into his hands as thanks, the teenager who begged him to hurry, because her party was starting. None stirred the longing he carried, the quiet ache for a connection that went beyond words. At night, in his cramped yaba room, he lay on the lumpy mattress, the sounds of his neighbors' radios and arguments filtering through the thin walls. He wondered if his plan was folly, if true love could be found amid the chaos of Lagos. Had he traded one cage for another, chasing a dream that didn't exist? Yet, as he closed his eyes, the stubborn hope that had driven him to this point refused to dim. Somewhere out there, he believed, was the woman who would change everything. And he would find her, not as Adebayo Ogunleye, but as Bayo Ade, a man with nothing to offer but his heart. It was a humid Tuesday afternoon in Lagos, the kind where the air clung to your skin like a second shirt and the sun beat down with unrelenting ferocity. The city was alive, its pulse a chaotic symphony of honking cars, the shrill cries of hawkers, and the rumble of Okadas weaving through traffic. Bayo Ade, as he now called himself, maneuvered his battered motorcycle through the crowded streets of Ikeja, the engine coughing like an old man with a smoker's lungs. Sweat trickled down his brow, stinging his eyes, and his faded t-shirt stuck to his back, the fabric worn thin from weeks of riding under the Lagos sun. His phone, strapped to a handlebar, buzzed with his latest assignment, a delivery to a tailoring shop called Chinello Stitches, tucked between a phone repair stall and a provision store on a narrow street off Oba Akron Avenue. Bayo pulled up to the shop, the tires crunching against the uneven pavement littered with bottle caps and sachet wrappers. He killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying sounds around him. The chatter of women bargaining at a nearby fruit stall, the tinny beat of Afrobeat spilling from a radio in the phone repair shop, and the rhythmic hum of a sewing machine drifting from within Chinello Stitches. The shop sign was hand-painted, the letters bold but slightly uneven, with a small heart dotting the I in Stitches. It was modest, unassuming, yet it radiated a quiet pride that made Bayo pause. He wiped his brow with the back of his hand, the sweat smearing dust across his forehead, and grabbed the package from his delivery bag, a small, neatly wrapped parcel labeled sewing supplies. His heart thudded, not from the ride, but from a strange anticipation he couldn't name. Something about this delivery felt different. Stepping into the shop, Bayo was enveloped by a wave of cool air, a relief from the oppressive heat outside. The space was small, no larger than his old walk-in closet in Ikoyi, but was alive with color and texture. Rolls of Ankara fabric, vibrant with swirls of indigo, crimson, and gold, were stacked against the walls, their patterns telling stories of tradition and celebration. Mannequins stood like silent sentinels, draped in half-finished gowns, their hems pinned with precision. The air carried the faint scent of starch and cotton, mingled with a hint of lavender from a small diffuser on a wooden table. A single fluorescent bulb flickered overhead, casting a soft glow that danced across the fabrics. At the heart of the shop, a young woman sat at an old Singer sewing machine, its pedal creaking as her fingers guided a piece of emerald green fabric with the dexterity of a pianist. She was striking, not in the polished, airbrushed way of the women Bayo had known in his former life, with their contoured faces and designer labels, but in a raw, effortless beauty that seemed to radiate from within. Her skin was a deep ebony, smooth and luminous, catching the light like polished obsidian. Her hair was braided in neat cornrows that swept back from her forehead, each braid a testament to hours of care. She wore a simple blouse, its sleeves rolled up to her elbows, and a wrapper tied snugly around her waist, the fabric a muted blue that contrasted with the vivid colors around her. Her posture was one of focus, her shoulders squared, her lips pursed slightly as she worked. But when she looked up, her eyes stopped Bayo in his tracks. They were sharp, like they could cut through lies, yet warm, like a hearth on a cold night, with a depth that seemed to see beyond the surface and touch the soul. "Good afternoon," Bayo said, his voice rougher than he intended, the package suddenly feeling heavier in his hands. He held it up, a clumsy gesture, as if presenting an offering. "Delivery for Chinello Nwankwo." "That's me," she said, standing with a fluid grace that made the small shop feel grander, like a palace courtyard. Her voice was soft but firm, laced with a gentle Igbo accent that rolled off her tongue like a melody. She was shorter than Bayo, her frame petite but strong, her hands calloused from years of needlework. She wore no makeup, No jewelry save for a thin silver bangle that glinted on her wrist, yet she carried herself with a quiet dignity that outshone the glitz of the women Bayo had once courted. "What's in it?" she asked, her eyes flicking to the package with a mix of curiosity and efficiency. Bayo glanced at the label, his fingers fumbling slightly as he read. "Says it's threads, needles, sewing stuff." He cringed inwardly at his vagueness, but Chinello's lips quirked in a small smile, as if she found his awkwardness endearing. She nodded, stepping forward to take the package. "Sound about right. I've been waiting for these." She signed for on his phone, her strokes quick and precise, her nails short and practical. As she handed the phone back, her gaze lingered on him, assessing. "You're new, aren't you? I know most of the Swift Rides guys. There's Emika with a loud laugh, Kazim who's always chewing gum, but I haven't seen you before." Bayo was caught off guard by her perceptiveness, a flush creeping up his neck. He hadn't expected to be noticed. Not like this. "Yeah, it just started," he said, managing a smile that felt more genuine than he'd intended. "Name's Bayo. Bayo Ade." "Chinello," she said, extending a hand. Her grip was strong, her palm warm and slightly rough, a contrast to the soft hands of the women he'd known, who'd never lifted more than a champagne flute. Her smile was genuine, not the practiced charm of high society, but a warmth that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Welcome to the hustle, Bayo. It's not for the faint-hearted." In that moment, as their hands touched, Bayo felt a spark, a quiet, electric pull that made his heart stutter. It wasn't just her beauty, though that was undeniable. It was her presence, her groundedness, the way she seemed to belong to this world of hard work and vibrant chaos in a way he never had. He stood there, longer than necessary, his hand lingering in hers until she gently pulled away, her smile turning curious. "Thanks for the delivery," she said, setting the package on a table cluttered with spools of thread and a pair of well-worn scissors. She opened it with a small knife, revealing a bundle of colorful threads and a pack of needles, her fingers brushing the contents with a reverence that spoke of her craft. "These are for a big order. Wedding asoebi for a bride in Lekki. She's picky, but I like a challenge." Bayo nodded, unsure what to say but reluctant to leave. The shop felt like a sanctuary, a world apart from the dusty streets outside. He glanced around, taking in the details, a small radio in the corner playing a soft juju tune, a framed photo of a smiling family on the wall, a notebook filled with sketches of dresses, their lines bold and imaginative. "You made all this?" he asked, gesturing to the mannequins, his voice tinged with awe. Chinello's eyes lit up, a flicker of pride breaking through her calm demeanor. "Every stitch. Been sewing since I was a girl, back in Onitsha. My auntie taught me, said I had talking fingers." She laughed, a sound like bells, and Bayo felt his chest tighten. "This shop's my own, though. Took years of saving, but it's mine." "That's incredible," Bayo said, meaning it. He thought of his own life, handed to him on a silver platter, and felt a pang of envy for her hard-won independence. He wanted to ask more, to know her story, her dreams, but customer entered, a middle-aged woman in a bright ghillie, clutching a bag of fabric and chattering about a dress for her daughter's graduation. Chinello's attention shifted, her professional smile snapping into place, and Bayo knew his moment was over. "See you around, Bayo," she said as he turned to leave, her voice carrying a warmth that lingered in his ears like a song. "See you," he replied, stepping back into the heat, his heart pounding as if he'd run a marathon. He climbed onto his bike, the engine sputtering to life, but his mind was still in that shop, replaying every detail. Her smile, her voice, the way her eyes had seemed to see him, really see him, not as a delivery man or an Ogunlai, but as Bayo. That brief encounter stayed with him, a melody he couldn't shake. Over the next few days, Chinello's face haunted his thoughts as he rode through Lagos's chaos, delivering packages to offices and homes. He found himself volunteering for every delivery in Acadia, hoping for another chance to visit her shop. Sometimes, he'd arrive to find her too busy to chat, her head bent over her sewing machine, the hum of the needle a steady rhythm as she worked on a gown or a dashiki. She'd glance up, offer a quick smile, and return her task, her focus unbreakable. Other times, She'd have a moment to spare, and she'd hand him a chilled bottle of water from a small fridge behind the counter, her fingers brushing his as she did. "You look like you're melting out there," she'd say, her tone teasing but kind. Their conversations were brief but rich, like sips of sweet palm wine. Bayo learned she was 26, the eldest of 4 siblings, her parents back in Anambra, where her father ran a small chemist shop, and her mother sold vegetables in the market. Chinelo had come to Lagos 5 years ago, apprenticing with a tailor disseminated by a stern tailor in Onitsha. She'd built her shop from scratch, scraping together every kobo while working odd jobs, cleaning houses, selling recharge cards, anything to keep her dream alive. Her youngest brother, Chikwudi, was her pride, a bright boy of 16 who wanted to study engineering, and Chinelo was determined to send him to university. "He's got a brain like a computer," she said one day, her eyes shining. "I'll do whatever it takes to give him a chance." Bayo listened, captivated by her strength, her selflessness. He shared small truths about himself, his love for old Nollywood films, his habit of singing off-key to Fela Kuti in the shower, but he wove a careful fiction around his life, claiming he was from a modest family in Ibadan, his parents retired teachers. The lies tasted bitter, but he clung to them, terrified of what the truth might do. Chinelo knew him as Bayo Ade, a delivery man scraping by on tips and grit, his hands rough from handlebars, his clothes dusted with the city's grime. How would she react if she learned he was Adebayo Ogunlai, heir to a fortune, a man who'd never known hunger or want? Would she see him as a fraud, a rich man toying with her world, slumming it for a thrill? The thought twisted his gut, a cold knot of fear that tightened each time she looked at him with those piercing, trusting eyes. Yet, every moment would her strengthen his resolve to keep up the charade. Her laugh was a burst of joy, bright and unreserved, whether the story of a customer's outrageous demands or Bayo's clumsy attempt to describe a tricky delivery route. Her determination inspired him. Each stitch she sewed was a step toward her dream of designing for Lagos Fashion Week. Her sketches filled with bold, innovative designs that fused tradition with modernity. She poured her heart into her work, and Bayo saw in her a passion he'd never known in his world of boardrooms and galas. She was fire and earth, ambition and grace, and he was falling deeper with every word, every glance. One evening, after delivering a late order, a bundle of zippers and buttons for an urgent job, Chinelo insisted he stay. "You look like you haven't eaten all day," she said, her tone firm but warm, as she set a plate of jollof rice and fried plantain before him on the shop's small table. "Eat. No arguments." Bayo laughed, the sound easing the tension in his chest. The food was simple but exquisite, the rice spiced just right, the plantain caramelized to a golden crisp. They sat across from each other, the shop quiet save for the hum of the radio, now playing a soft high-life tune. The fluorescent bulb cast a warm glow, and for the first time, Bayo felt at home, not in a mansion or a penthouse, but here, in this modest space filled with Chinelo's dreams. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing like a river. Chinelo spoke of her vision for her brand, her hope to create clothes that told stories, Igbo motifs reimagined for a global stage. Bayo, careful to keep his lies consistent, spun tales of delivery woes, a flat tire in Yaba, a customer who tipped him with a single sachet of Milo. But he let slip small truths, too. His love for the smell of rain on Lagos streets, his habit of sketching city scenes in a notebook he kept hidden. Chinelo listened, her eyes bright, her questions gentle but probing, as if she sensed there was more to him than he let on. When she laughed, her whole face lit up, her eyes crinkling at the corners, and Bayo felt his heart swell. She was everything he'd been searching for, real, vibrant, unbroken by the world's weight. But as the night deepened, she studied him, her gaze softening. "You're not like the other guys," she said, her voice thoughtful, a mix of curiosity and warmth. "There's something different about you." Bayo's stomach tightened, his fork pausing midair. "Different how?" he asked, his voice quieter, a flicker of panic in his chest. She shrugged, her smile soft, almost wistful. "I don't know, like you're carrying a secret. But it's okay. We all have our stories." Her words pierced him, sharp and true. He wanted to confess, to tell her he was Adebayo Ogunlai, that he disguised himself to find a love like hers. But fear held him back, a cold hand around his heart. What if the truth shattered this fragile bond, this connection that felt like destiny? Instead, he smiled, a weak deflection, and changed the subject to her latest design, hating himself for the lie but clinging to the hope that their connection could grow stronger. As he left the shop, the night air cool against his skin, Bayo knew he was in love. Not just falling, but plummeting. Chinelo was his spark, his reason for this mad masquerade. But the weight of his deception was a shadow, growing darker with each moment they shared. He climbed onto his bike, the engine roared into life, and rode into the neon-lit chaos of Lagos. Her smile burned into his soul, her words echoing like a warning. Asterisk, we all have our stories. It was a sweltering September in Lagos, the air thick with the promise of rain, and the restless energy of a city that never slept. The streets buzzed with the usual chaos. Danfo buses blaring horns, hawkers weaving through traffic with trays of groundnuts, and the distant wail of a siren cutting through the din. But beneath this familiar rhythm, a storm was brewing. Swift Rides, the delivery company that kept Lagos's pulse beating, was at a standstill. The riders, fed up with meager pay, grueling hours, and a management that treated them like cogs of a machine, had down tools. The citywide strike brought the delivery network to its knees, leaving restaurants, shops, and customers scrambling. For Bayo Ade, or rather, Adebayo Ogunlai, the billionaire's son masquerading as a delivery man, the strike was a test of loyalty. He didn't need the job, not with the Ogunlai fortune waiting in the wings, but the camaraderie he'd built with his fellow riders, men like Kazim, who shared his cigarettes, and Emeka, who cracked jokes to lighten the grind, had rooted him to their cause. So he joined the picket line, chanting alongside them outside the Swift Rides depot in Agba, their voices hoarse but defiant. No pay, no ride. The strike, however, was a dagger to Chinelo's stitches. The small tailoring shop in Ikeja, where Chinelo Nwankwo poured her heart into every stitch. Her business, built from years of sweat and sacrifice, depended on timely deliveries to keep clients happy. Asoebi for weddings, agbadas for chieftains' ceremonies, dresses for graduations. Each order was a lifeline, a step toward her dream of designing for Lagos Fashion Week. With no riders to ferry her creations across the city, orders piled up on her shop's small table, their vibrant fabrics a mocking reminder of her vulnerability. Clients called daily, their voices sharp with impatience. Where's my dress? You promised delivery yesterday. Chinelo, usually unflappable, felt the weight of their demands like stones on her chest. She worked late into the night. Her sewing machines hum a desperate rhythm, but without deliveries, her efforts were futile. One humid evening, as the sky darkened with storm clouds, Chinelo's resolve cracked. She sat in her shop, the fluorescent bulb flickering overhead, surrounded by half-finished gowns and a notebook filled with orders she couldn't fulfill. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Bayo's number, her pride warring with her desperation. When he answered, his voice warm and familiar despite the static, she didn't waste words. Bayo, I don't know what to do, she said, her voice tight with worry, each syllable heavy with the fear she'd fought to suppress. I have orders piling up and people are angry. If I don't deliver these dresses, I could lose everything. My shop, my reputation, everything I've worked for. Bayo was in his cramped yaba room, sprawled on a lumpy mattress, the ceiling fan creaking above him. The strike had left him restless, torn between his loyalty to the riders and the life he'd left behind, a life where money could solve any problem. Chinelo's call, raw with vulnerability, pierced his heart. He sat up, his grip tightening on the phone. I'll help you, he said without hesitation, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions within. I've got my bike. Tell me where to go. Chinelo hesitated, her breath catching. But the strike, you're part of it. I don't want to put you in a bad spot. You're not, Bayo said, already pulling on his worn sneakers. This is for you. Chinelo, I'm in. His words carried a weight he didn't fully understand, a promise that went beyond deliveries, a vow to stand by her, no matter the cost. The next morning, Bayo arrived at Chinelo's stitches before dawn, his motorcycle coughing to life outside the shop. The street was quiet, save for the clatter of a nearby buka, setting up for breakfast, and the distant crow of a rooster. Chinello was already there, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion, but bright with determination. She handed him a stack of carefully wrapped packages. Dresses, blouses, and caftans, each labeled with client's name and address. "These need to go out today," she said, her voice firm but laced with gratitude. "Start with Mrs. Okoye in Surulere. She's been calling non-stop." Bayo nodded, securing the packages in his delivery bag. "I've got this," he said, flashing a smile he hoped would ease her worry. But as he rode off, the weight of his task settled in. Lagos was a beast, its traffic a snarling tangle of cars, buses, and okadas. The strike had made things worse, with frustrated commuters clogging the roads and tempers flaring. Bayo wove through the chaos, his bike rattling over potholes, his eyes scanning for shortcuts through alleyways and side streets. He dodged touts in Oshodi, their hands grabbing at his bag until he shouted them off, and braved rain-soaked roads in Yaba, the downpour turning the streets into rivers of mud. His shirt clung to his skin, his hands ached from gripping the handlebars, and his lungs burned from exhaust fumes. But he pressed on, driven by Chinello's trust and the image of her weary but hopeful face. Each delivery was a small victory. In Surulere, Mrs. Okoye, a plump woman with sharp tongue, softened when Bayo handed her the package, her frown melting into a grudging, "Thank you." In Ikoyi, a young bride-to-be clapped with delight as she unwrapped her asobi, her joy a balm to Bayo's fatigue. He crisscrossed the city, from the bustling markets of Balagan to the gated estates of Lekki, his bike a lifeline for Chinello's dreams. Between deliveries, he'd returned to the shop, where Chinello worked tirelessly, her fingers trembling as she sewed, her small fridge stocked with bottles of water she pressed into his hands. "You're a godsend, Bayo," she said one afternoon, her voice soft but fierce. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world shrank to just them. The hum of the sewing machine, the flicker of the bulb, the unspoken bond that grew stronger with each shared struggle. But the cracks in Bayo's disguise were widening, threatening to unravel everything. On the fourth day, a delivery took him to a sprawling mansion in Lekki Phase 1, its gates guarded by stern security men and its driveway lined with SUVs. The client, Mrs. Adebisi, was a society matron who'd attended his mother's charity galas, her neck dripping with gold and her voice dripping with entitlement. Bayo, sweaty and disheveled, handed her a package, a custom Igbata for her husband's birthday. She peered at him, her eyes narrowing as she took in his familiar features, the chiseled jaw, the intelligent eyes that had once charmed her at a fundraiser. "Adebayo Ogunlai," she said, frowning, her voice a mix of disbelief and suspicion. "What are you doing delivering packages?" Bayo's blood ran cold, his heart slamming against his ribs. The air seemed to thicken, the sounds of Lekki, distant car horns, the hum of a generator, fading to a dull roar. He forced a laugh, the sound brittle and unconvincing. "Ma, you've got the wrong person," he said, rubbing the back of his neck as if to brush off her scrutiny. "I'm just Bayo, Swift Rides. Happens all the time, people mixing me up." He kept his tone light, his smile strained, but Mrs. Adebisi's frown deepened, her eyes lingering as if trying to solve a puzzle. She didn't press, but as Bayo rode away, his hands shook on the handlebars. The encounter left him rattled. The walls was like crumbling like a house in a storm. He'd been careful, avoiding his old haunts, keeping his head down. But Lagos was a small world for the elite, and his face was too known, too tied to the Ogunlai name. How long could he keep this up before someone else recognized him? And what would Chinello think if she learned the truth? Not from him, but from whispers or chance. The thought was a knife in his gut, sharper than the exhaustion that clung to his bones. The crisis peaked at Chinello's first major fashion showcase, a breakthrough moment hosted by the Lagos Designer Collective at a chic venue in Victoria Island. It was a glittering affair, with fairy lights strung across a courtyard, high-life music floating through the air, and a runway where models would showcase Nigeria's rising talents. Chinello had been invited to present 6 pieces, a chance to catch the eye of investors and boutiques. Bayo, still her unofficial courier, helped transport her creations, vibrant gowns and tailored suits, each a testament to her skill and vision. He arrived at the venue in his delivery gear, his bike parked discreetly behind the catering vans, and carried the garment bags inside, his heart swelling with pride as he watched Chanello direct the models with quiet authority. Her eyes were bright with nerves and hope, her simple black dress a stark contrast to the flamboyance around her, yet she shone brighter than anyone in the room. The showcase was a triumph. Models strutted down the runway in Chanello's designs, encore gowns with daring cuts, caftans with intricate embroidery that caught the light like jewels. The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers echoing off the courtyard walls, and Bayo, standing at the back, clapped until his palms stung. Investors approached Chanello afterward, their cards and promises piling up like treasures, and Bayo watched from the sidelines, content to be her silent supporter, his love for her a quiet fire in his chest. But at the after-party, disaster struck. The courtyard was transformed into a festive scene. Tables laden with small chops and chilled star beer, a DJ spinning Davido and Burna Boy, and guests mingling under the fairy lights. Tund, Bayo's best friend, and the only one who knew his secret, had come to celebrate, his tech bro swagger softened by genuine pride for Chanello's success. But Tund, never one to resist an open bar, had one too many glasses of palm wine. As he chatted with a group of fashion bloggers, his voice loud and slurred, he let slip the truth. You know, Bayo, the delivery guy? That's Adebayo Ogunlai, man. Billionaire's son, playing Rider for Love. Nollywood stuff, I swear. A guest nearby, a gossip columnist with nose for scandal, overheard, her eyes lighting up like a predator's. The whisper spread like wildfire through the crowd. That's Adebayo Ogunlai, the billionaire's son. Why is he pretending to be a delivery man? Heads turned, fingers pointed, and soon the courtyard buzzed with speculation, the music drowned out by the hum of shock and curiosity. Chanello, mingling with an investor near the bar, caught the whispers, her face drained of color, her smile freezing as the words sank in. She turned, her eyes scanning the crowd until they found Bayo, leaning against a pillar, oblivious to the storm brewing. She marched toward him, her steps quick and purposeful, her black dress swirling like a storm cloud. The crowd parted, sensing drama, their murmurs a low hum. "Is it true?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the noise, her eyes blazing with betrayal. "Are you Adebayo Ogunlai?" Bayo's throat tightened, his mouth dry as sand. The courtyard seemed to spin, the fairy lights blurring into streaks of gold. "Chanello, I can explain," he started, his voice hoarse, his hands raised as if to ward off her anger. "Explain what?" she snapped, her voice trembling, each word a shard of glass. "That you lied to me? That you let me think you were like me, hustling to survive, when you're, what, a billionaire? Was this a game to you?" Her eyes, once warm and trusting, were now storms of hurt, tears glistening but refusing to fall. "No," Bayo said, his voice breaking, his heart splintering under her gaze. "It was never a game. I wanted you to see me, not my money. I love you, Chanello." The words, raw and true, hung in the air, but they fell hollow against her pain. She shook her head, a tear escaping down her cheek, her voice barely a whisper. "Love built on lies isn't love. I trusted you, Bayo, or whoever you are." She turned, her shoulders rigid, and stormed out the courtyard, her footsteps echoing on the cobblestones, leaving a silence louder than the music. Bayo stood frozen, the crowd's whispers closing in like vultures. Tund, sobering fast, rushed to the side, muttering apologies, but Bayo barely heard him. His world had shattered, the woman he loved gone, her words a haunting refrain. "I trusted you." For days he tried to reach her, calls that went unanswered, texts that sat unread, visits to her shop where the shutters were down, the sign a mocking reminder of what he'd lost. He sank into despair, his Yaba room a prison of regret, her face haunting his dreams. Had he been wrong to hide the truth? Had he lost the only woman who'd ever truly seen him, not for his wealth, but for the man he'd tried to be? It was a quiet October morning in Lagos, the kind where the air held a rare stillness before the city's chaos roared to life. The sun, just cresting the horizon, cast a soft golden glow over Acacia. Where Chanello's stitches stood, its hand-painted sign a beacon of her hard-won dreams. Inside the shop, Chinelo Nwankwo sat alone, the hum of her sewing machine silenced for once. The vibrant rolls of Ankara fabric, usually a source of inspiration, seemed to mock her with their cheer. Her hands, calloused from years of needlework, rested idle on a half-finished gown, its emerald threads catching the light of a flickering fluorescent bulb. Her eyes, usually sharp and focused, were clouded with a storm of emotions, anger, hurt, and a gnawing ache she couldn't name. A month had passed since the fashion showcase, since the night her world tilted on its axis. The memory of Bayo's betrayal, or whoever he was, burned like a fresh wound. Adebayo Ogunlai, the billionaire's son, had masqueraded as Bayo Ade, a delivery man, weaving himself into her life with lies. She'd trusted him, opened her heart to the man who'd eaten her jollof rice, carried her dresses through Lagos's chaos, and looked at her like she was the only star in the sky. That man, she'd thought, was real. But the truth, revealed in a haze of whispers and Tun's drunken slip, had shattered her faith. She'd stormed out of the showcase, her heart a tangle of fury and grief, and since then, she'd shut Bayo out, ignoring his calls, deleting his texts, keeping her shop's shutters down when she knew he'd come by. Yet, the silence she'd imposed felt like a punishment for herself as much as for him. Chinelo leaned back in her chair, the creak of wood echoing in the empty shop. The radio, usually tuned to High Life or Juju, was off, leaving only the distant hum of morning traffic and the chatter of a fruit seller outside. She closed her eyes, replaying their moments together. The way Bayo's laugh had warmed her after a long day, the quiet strength in his hands as he'd carried her packages, the spark in his eyes when he'd praised her designs. Those moments had felt true, hadn't they? But how could she trust her heart when it had been so easily fooled? The question gnawed at her, a relentless tide eroding her resolve. Desperate for clarity, Chinelo had taken a rare trip to Onitsha, to the small restaurant her mother, Nneka, ran in the heart of the market. Nneka's kitchen was a humble space, its walls painted a faded yellow, its tables crowded with traders and laborers savoring plates of egusi soup and pounded yam. The air was thick with the aroma of palm oil and smoked fish, and Nneka, a stout woman with a quick smile and eyes that missed nothing, ruled the chaos with a wooden spoon and a sharp wit. Chinelo found her mother behind the counter, stirring a pot of egusi soup, the steam curling around her like a halo. The restaurant was quiet in the late afternoon. The lunch rush faded, and Nneka's presence was a balm to Chinelo's frayed nerves. "Mama, I don't know what to do," Chinelo said, her voice cracking as she sat on a stool, her hands twisting the hem of her wrapper. She poured out the story, Bayo's kindness, his lies, the betrayal that had left her reeling. "I thought I knew him, but he's someone else. How can I trust him again? How can I trust myself?" Nneka listened, her spoon moving steadily, her face calm but attentive. When Chinelo finished, Nneka set the spoon down and wiped her hands on her apron, her gaze settling on her daughter with the weight of years. "Child," she said, her voice steady as the earth, "love is not about money or names. It's about trust, yes, but trust can be broken and rebuilt. If this boy lied, ask yourself why. Was it to hurt you or to find something true? You say he worked for you, believed in you, loved you. Was that a lie, or was it his heart speaking?" Chinelo frowned, her mother's words stirring the embers of her doubt. She thought of Bayo's tireless ride through Lagos, his sweat-soaked shirts, the way he'd cheered at her showcase, content to stand in the shadows. Those acts felt real, but the deception cast him in a murky light. "What if he was just playing a game?" she asked, her voice small. "What if I'm just a story he'll laugh about later?" Nneka's laugh was low, rich with wisdom. "Chinelo, you're no one's plaything. You're fire, my girl, and any man who loves you will burn for it. But fire needs truth to burn true. Go back to Lagos. Talk to him. See his heart, not his name. Then decide." Chinelo returned to Ikeja, her mother's words a quiet anchor in her storm. She threw herself into her work, sewing late into the night, her design sharper, bolder, as if channeling her pain into every stitch. But Bayo's absence was a shadow, his memory lingering in the water bottles she no longer handed out, the empty space where he'd once sat eating her plantain. She missed him, the way he'd made her laugh, the way he'd made her feel seen, not as a tailor or a hustler, but as Chinello, a woman with dreams as vast as the Atlantic. A month after the showcase, on a cool morning when the air smelled of rain, Bayo stood outside Chinello's stitches, his heart pounding like a talking drum. He wore a simple t-shirt and jeans, his motorcycle parked the street away, its chipped paint a reminder of the life he'd chosen. In his hands was a package, not a delivery, but a gift wrapped in plain brown paper, its weight both physical and emotional. It was a sketchbook, its pages filled with designs he'd drawn over sleepless nights, inspired by Chinello's work. Gowns with Igbo motifs, kaftans with modern cuts, each line a testament to his belief in her talent. Tucked inside was a letter, raw and unfiltered, written in his neat, deliberate hand. In it, he poured out his heart, apologies for his lies, explanations of his fear that wealth would taint love, and a vow to be honest no matter the cost. "I love you, Chinello," he'd written, the words trembling on the page. "Not as a game, not as a story, but as the truth I've found in you." Bayo stood there, the street waking around him, children in school uniforms skipping past, a bread seller balancing a tray on her head, the distant honk of a danfo. His palms were sweaty, his throat dry, his vulnerability a foreign weight. He'd faced boardrooms and galas with ease, but this moment, standing before her shop, felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. What if she turned him away? What if his lies had burned the bridge between them? But he thought of her laugh, her strength, the way she'd made him feel alive, and he knew he had to try. Inside, Chinello was sorting threads, her movements mechanical, her mind elsewhere. The bell above the door jingled, and she looked up, her breath catching as she saw Bayo. He stood framed in the doorway, the morning light casting him in a soft glow, his face etched with a vulnerability she'd never seen. Her heart lurched, a mix of anger and longing, and she steeled herself, folded her arms. "What do you want, Bayo?" she asked, her voice steady but edged with pain. He stepped forward, holding out the package, his hands trembling slightly. "This is for you," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "It's not a delivery. It's me, trying to make things right." Chinello hesitated, her eyes flicking from the package to his face. She wanted to send him away, to protect the fragile walls she'd built, but something in his gaze, raw, unguarded, made her pause. She took the package, her fingers brushing his, the contact sending a jolt through her. She set it on the table, her movement slow, and unwrapped it, revealing the sketchbook. She opened it, her breath hitching as she saw the designs. Her style, her spirit, but seen through his eyes, each page a love letter in ink. She found the letter, its pages folded carefully, and read it, her eyes misting as his words washed over her. "I wanted you to love me for me," he'd written, "not for what I have. I was wrong to lie, but my love was never a lie." She looked up, tears glistening, and stepped outside, where Bayo waited, his hands shoved in his pockets, his face a map of hope and fear. The street was alive now, the fruit seller's voice rising, a motorcycle roaring past. But they stood in their own world. "I don't know if I can trust you again," Chinello said, her voice soft but steady, each word measured. "You hurt me, Bayo. You made me feel like a fool. But," she paused, her throat tight, her mother's words echoing, "I miss you, and I think I love you too." Bayo's face lit up, a sunrise breaking through clouds, but he held back, respecting the space between them. "I'll earn your trust, Chinello," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "however long it takes. I'm not going anywhere." She nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears, and for the first time in weeks, the knot in her chest loosened. They stood there, the shop sign swaying gently in the breeze, the city humming around them, a new beginning taking root in the ashes of their past. The weeks that followed were a cautious dance. Bayo returned to Chinello's stitches, not as a courier but as himself, Adebayo Ogunlai, a man striving to be better. He brought her to his world, not with grandeur but with honesty, dinners at small bukas where they shared umla and laughed over old stories, visits to his parents' mansion in Ikoyi, where Chief Olusegun's stern gaze softened at Chinello's ambition, and Alhaja Mina embraced her like a daughter, her eyes twinkling with approval. "You've chosen well, Adebayo," she whispered to him, her hand warm on his. Chinello's business soared, her designs gracing runways and boutiques, her name whispered in fashion circles. Bayo supported her, not with his wealth but with his time, helping with logistics, attending her shows, celebrating each victory as if it were his own. Their love grew, rooted in honesty and mutual respect, a bond forged through trials and truth, stronger for cracks it had endured. Years later, their wedding was a vibrant Lagos affair, held in a garden draped with fairy lights, the air alive with Fela Kuti's rhythms and juju beats. Chinello was radiant in a gown she designed herself, its Ankara fabric a tapestry of their journey. Bold, resilient, beautiful. Bayo, in a tailored bata, gazed at her, his heart full, knowing every lie, every risk, had led to this moment. Their families danced under a canopy of stars, the city's pulse blending with their joy, and as they swayed to the music, Bayo whispered, "You're my home, Chinello, always." She smiled, her hand in his, her eyes reflecting Lagos's golden light. "And you're mine, Bayo. No disguise is needed." Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Your support keeps the story alive.